I don't think there's any word that raises more emotion or prompts more memories than the word mother. The experiences we had with our mothers created memories that neither time nor distance can ever erase. When we think of mother, many images flash to our mental screen. Maybe not every childhood memory is pleasant, but those that are likely revolve around a woman who had a way of smoothing out all the rough edges of life. A woman who was many things to many people, but to you, she was Mom. One time I was down at Walmart studying mothers. I took note of some mothers in action. I was in line at the checkout, and there, a few feet in front of me, was a young mother with a little toddler down by her knee and also holding a baby on her hip. And somehow she was managing to handle her credit card. She was remarkable. In one gesture, it seemed, she rescued her or retrieved her toddler's hand from the candy rack, gave the credit card to the cashier, and placed a comforting smooch on the head of her little baby. And the baby was drooling all over her mother's shoulder while the toddler was gripping onto her leg down by her knee. There they were, holding on to one another while they made this purchase. A mother in action. Then as I was leaving Walmart, there was another woman coming in, another mother with her kindergarten-age son, and suddenly she stopped and looked down at her child. She reached into her pocket and brought out a little wadded Kleenex. She moistened it with her tongue, and she swabbed over the dirty face of her little boy. He kind of resisted, but only briefly. Satisfied with her work and his appearance, she stuffed the Kleenex back in her pocket and took hold of his waiting hand, and they went into the store. A mother in action. Then out in the parking lot, I noticed a woman, a mother, and her teenage daughter chatting. Their hands were kind of going back and forth a bit. It wasn't an argument, but it was sort of an animated conversation. The daughter was 6 inches taller than the mother. Her head was kind of down a little bit. The mother rolled her eyes and patted her daughter's back. And as they reached the car, the mother gave the car keys to the daughter, and then the daughter started smiling. So, another mother in action. There's no one like a mother in any of our lives, and we credit her with planting most of the good things that have come to bear fruit through the years. It doesn't matter who we are, we each had a mother who set the course of our life. One time there was a group of second graders who were asked the following questions about moms. Question to second graders. Why did God make mothers? Answer. She's the only one that knows where the Scotch tape is. Answer. To help us out of there when we were getting born. Question. How did God make mothers? Answer. God made my mom just like He made me. He just used bigger parts. Question. What ingredients are mothers made of? Answer. God makes mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world and one dab of mean. Question. Why did God give you your mother and not some other mom? Answer. Because we're related. Answer. God knew she likes me a lot more than other people's moms like me. So that's why God gave me my mom. Well, we could spend all day sharing thoughts and sentiments about mother. But the Bible says an awfully lot about mothers. It says a whole bunch. For instance, Genesis 3:20. Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all living. Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Leviticus 19 and verse 3. Each of you must respect his mother and father. I am the Lord your God. Proverbs 10:1. A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son grief to his mother. Isaiah 66:13. As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you. And then John 19:26 and 27. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. In the Bible, we are not surprised to read so many references to mothers because of the great value they have in the world. And we're also not surprised to know that Timothy was also greatly impacted by his mother. He was given an environment that nurtured him to become a solid man of God, a real man of God. And so that's where we're going to go today for our Bible study on why God made mothers. So I'm going to 2 Timothy chapter 1, and I'm going to read verses 3 to 7. And then we'll study this passage and find out why God made mothers. 2 Timothy chapter 1, 3 through 7. I thank God whom I serve with a pure conscience, as my forefathers did, as without ceasing I remember you in my prayers night and day, greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears, that I may be filled with joy. When I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. Therefore, I remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. All right, in those verses, when you look at them, you can note that there are 5 seeds that a mother plants. And they were all planted in Timothy, this faithful man of God, this young pastor to whom Paul wrote so admiringly and affectionately. We're looking at seeds that mothers plant. Look at verse 4 again. Verse 4. Greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears. Mindful of your tears. See those words? What does that tell you about Timothy? Well, it tells me, it should tell all of us, that the first of those seeds that a mother plants in the soil of our hearts is tenderness. Evidently, Timothy had a gentleness about him that made him sensitive and tender. Where did he learn that? Well, usually our lessons in tenderness come from mom. There are a lot of things we learn from Dad, of course, indeed. Dad teaches us, the necessity of hard work, physical labor, the importance of honesty and integrity. But the value of a tender heart, now that generally comes from mom. It's the caring skills. It's the compassion skills. It's whatever involves emotion or tears. Those are best learned from our mothers. In our homes, there will always be little hands that keep lifting up, looking for that tenderness and that caring that they don't find out there on the playground, in the schoolroom, out there where the world is tough and cruel. From Dad, we learn bravery, we learn diligence, we learn strength under adversity. But from our mothers, we learn to grieve when things don't go right, when our little heart is wounded. We learn that emotion is okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay even for little boys to cry. It's okay. It's important to be sensitive to feeling and to weep. What is it about a mother's kiss that can just heal anything from a cut finger to a broken heart? I think Timothy must have experienced this at home. He must have, because Paul referred to him and his tears. Timothy must have been an emotional, tender kind of person. And Paul highlights that. So, I think that's one of the seeds a mother plants. Another seed, this would be in verse 5, is spirituality. Verse 5. Look at verse 5. when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. So here now, Paul noted Timothy's capacity for emotion and tenderness, and now he highlights Timothy's spirituality, his religious experience, the faith that was in him. Genuine. In fact, he calls it genuine faith. Now that's a compliment from the apostle, isn't it? He could look at Timothy and he says, Timothy, I see in you genuine faith. Wow. That's quite a compliment, quite a thing to note. Authentic spirituality. Now, apparently with Timothy, Paul saw nothing phony, nothing pretended. Timothy was not play acting. And then he says, you got it from your mother Eunice, and she got it from her mother Lois. Now I notice that verse does not mention a father or a grandfather, only a mother and a grandmother. One of the major contributions of a mother to her children, a grandmother to her grandchildren, is realism. Realism. Authenticity. You know, when the children hear a sermon or they sit in Sabbath school or in church school, they get a lot of facts poured into their heart, their little heads. But truth doesn't become real until it's been demonstrated, and exhibited in the flesh. Children gather the facts. They learn from the books. They see it in print. But they look to their parents to see, okay, how is this lived? How does this work? How does this make our lives different? How does kindness look? You don't learn it from a book. You see it in a life. How does forgiveness manifest itself? Is this real? Is any of this stuff real? And what's unconditional love? Boy, I'll tell you, mothers demonstrate that, don't they? I heard one grandchild say, I could burn down my grandmother's house and she would still love me. Now that's unconditional love, isn't it? That's unconditional. How about all the men who are residents at the prison? Each one of them has a mother. And I'll bet to say most all of them are loved by their mother, despite the fact they're in the prison. So unconditional love, see, mothers just really express that. They really demonstrate it, and they make it real. Who knows better about that than a mother? I think, every time we talk about mothers, we mention these 4 scholars who were discussing their favorite translations of the Bible. One scholar said he preferred the King James Version because it's such eloquent old English. Another scholar said he preferred the American Standard Bible for the way it moves the reader from passage to passage with confident feelings of accuracy from the original text. The third scholar said, well, he prefers Moffat because it helps to hold his attention. The fourth scholar said, well, those are all good translations, but there's one that is my favorite. I personally prefer my mother's translation. She translated every page into life. And it's the most convincing translation of all. Timothy must have read his mother's translation because it developed in him a sincere, genuine, authentic spirituality. Okay, let's go to the next one. Verse 7. Verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power. Okay, I think we could say there that this is another seed a mother plants, and that is confidence. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power. So we'll call that inner confidence. Where do we learn to have confidence? Where do we learn to fear? In our early childhood at home. Think about the words children hear in their homes. Are they affirming? Or are they shaming? Every time I go to a school program, I see it. You know, a school program, a Christmas program, a holiday program. There are the little kids up there standing. Every time I go, I see it. There the children are up front to sing or perform. And you know what? Those little eyes are just scanning the audience. And who are they looking for? Mom, Dad. Mom and Dad. Are you proud of me, Mom? Can you hear me sing? See? They're looking for their parents' approval. They're looking for affirmation. And I always feel sorry for those kids who don't have anyone there to be proud of them. They all need someone to be proud of them and cheer them. Why does a basketball team always have cheerleaders? You ever wondered that? Well, it's because the team always plays better with someone on the sideline cheering them on. Rah, rah, rah. See? Every child, every grandchild should have at least one cheerleader, be it mom or grandma, great-grandma. Let her affirm every strength and just celebrate every accomplishment and just watch that little self-confidence grow and build. And that's how brave men are made. Courageous women are developed because someone was there encouraging and cheering and affirming. So I think Timothy had that. He had that in his home, and it made him into a confident leader. Verse 7 again, we can also find another seed in verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of what? Love. Love, love, love. Love. You know, mothers are specialists in love. They're professional. They know how to deliver love. The closest thing we have to God's love is a mother's love. I recall that tragic story of a plane crash, a Northwest Airlines flight on August 16, 1987. The plane took off from Detroit Airport. The pilots were careless in the way they had set up the plane. They didn't have all the flaps in the right configuration. They barely got off the ground, and it just came right back down. On that plane, there was one survivor, a 4-year-old girl named Cecilia. When rescuers found Cecilia, they didn't believe she'd been on the plane. They thought she may have been on the ground in one of the cars that the plane hit when it came down. But when the passenger list was checked, there was her name, Cecilia. She survived. She was the only survivor, 4-year-old girl. Even as the plane was falling, Cecilia's mother unbuckled her own seatbelt and got down on her knees in front of her little baby, her little child, 4-year-old, wrapped her arms around Cecilia and would not let go. Isn't that the same as the love of Christ for us? He came down. He came down to our level. He lowered himself, coming clear down from heaven, and he covered us. He covered us with his own body and saved us from disaster. That's the love of God. And that's revealed in the love of a mother for her child. It's a living demonstration of love. There's one more seed, also comes from verse 7. Also comes from verse 7. Good judgment. It says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Some Bibles say self-control. Another way to put it is self-discipline. But it refers to the ability to make good choices and have good judgment. Good judgment. Good mothering not only showers us with love, but it helps us learn about boundaries in our lives. You know, it was our mothers who taught us the difference between right and wrong. There was a man who said, "When I was a little boy, my mother used to have me kneel beside her, and she placed her hand upon my head while she prayed. Before I was old enough to know her worth, she died, and I was left on my own devices. Like others, I was prone to stray, but I often felt myself checked, as if drawn back by a soft hand on my head. When I was a young man, I traveled to foreign countries and I was exposed to many temptations. But when I would have yielded, that same hand was on my head. And sometimes there came with it that sweet voice, 'Don't go that direction, my son. Do not sin against our God.'" Isn't that something? No matter how old he became, he could feel that hand, mother's hand. You know, one time when I was growing up, I remember going to my grandparents' house. Just 3 blocks off Highway 2 in Culbertson, Montana, there's the house where my grandparents lived, and it's right across from the hospital where I was born. Well, as we kids grew up, we'd go down there, and I always saw the hospital where I came from, right across the street from Grandpa and Grandma. And one time when I was 9 or 10, I was running through the house, Grandma's house, playing, running and playing, probably being a nuisance or making noise. Anyway, going through Grandpa and Grandma's dining room, I noticed a little scrap of paper. And all it had on it were the words, Billy Graham, Monday, 8 o'clock. That's all it said. Now, it was just a scrap of paper. And it wasn't intended really for me to read it. But it represented something that was important to Grandma. She didn't want to miss Billy Graham, Monday evening, 8 o'clock. And I just ran by there, just running by, and I just noticed it, and Grandma didn't know I'd read it. It was just it happened in 1 second. I noticed it. But I've never forgotten it. And I learned something. I learned what was important to Grandma. And it taught me something. So mothers, grandmothers, we never know, do we? By the way, what do our children and grandchildren learn about life from little scraps of debris we have laying around? What do they learn? They tear through the house. You don't know what they've seen, what they've noticed, what they've picked up. But it might be something that guides a life, has an influence. And it could be just a little thing. In the book Adventist Home, there's a whole section of 48 pages entitled Mother, Queen of the Household. Here's just one little segment. It says there, the king upon his throne has no higher work than has the mother. The mother is the queen of her household. She has in her power the molding of her children's characters that they may be fitted for the higher immortal life. An angel could not ask for a higher mission. For in doing this work, she is doing service for God. Let her only realize the high character of her task, and it will inspire her with courage. Let her realize the worth of her work and put on the whole armor of God, that she may resist the temptation to conform to the world's standard. Her work is for time and for eternity. So we've heard today 5 things that sprout from the seeds a mother plants in the lives of her children or grandchildren. Tenderness, spirituality, confidence, love, good judgment. What would the world be like without mothers who have given so much of themselves for us? So, just a word to all of you professional mothers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Praise God for you. Bless you.